This is the case study for Sam Sheppard. His early life. Samuel Holmes Sheppard was born in Cleveland, Ohio in 1923. He was an excellent student, an active athlete, and class president. He met his future wife, Marilyn Reese, while in high school. He was offered several athletic scholarships to small Ohio colleges and ultimately chose to attend Hanover College in Indiana. Samuel decided to study osteopathic medicine like his father and older brothers. He took supplementary courses at Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland before finishing his medical education at Los Angeles Osteopathic School of Physicians and Surgeons, which is now the University of California, Irvine. He earned his Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine degree, and he completed an internship and residency in neurosurgery at Los Angeles County General Hospital before ultimately moving back to Ohio to join his father's medical practice. The murder of Marilyn Reese Sheppard. On the night of Saturday, July 3, 1954, Sheppard and Marilyn were entertaining neighbors at their home. While watching the movie, Sheppard fell asleep on the daybed, and Marilyn walked the neighbors out. In the early hours of July 4, 1954, Marilyn was bludgeoned to death in her bed with an unknown instrument. The bedroom was covered in blood spatter, and drops of blood were found on the floors throughout the house and on the stairs. Several items appeared to have been stolen, including a wristwatch, keychain, and key, and fraternity ring. The items were later found in a canvas bag outside the Sheppard home. Sheppard insisted he was sleeping soundly on a daybed when he heard cries from his wife. He ran upstairs where he saw a Caucasian person in the bedroom, and he was knocked unconscious. When he awoke, he saw the intruder downstairs and chased him out of the house and down to the beach. The two tussled, and Sheppard was knocked unconscious again. The family dog was not heard barking by neighbors, and their 7-year-old son, Chip, was asleep in an adjacent bedroom for the entire ordeal. At 5:40 a.m., a neighbor received an urgent phone call from Sheppard, who pleaded for them to come to his home. When the neighbors arrived, Sheppard was found shirtless, and his pants were wet with bloodstains on the knees. Police arrived shortly after. When they arrived, Sheppard appeared to be in shock and disoriented. When the police were examining the crime scene, they noted that there was a lot of blood, but did not follow up on any other forms of evidence collection, like prints or fibers. After looking at the crime scene, they mentioned to Sheppard that he was a potential person of interest in this case. At this point, the police began removal of Marilyn's body from the crime scene. However, the full investigation and analysis of the crime scene had not been completed yet. Media involvement. Local media had an influence on the investigation. Local newspapers published editorials pushing for a public inquest into the cause of Marilyn's death. On July 22nd, Dr. Samuel Gerber, the coroner investigating the murder, announced he would begin an inquest. An inquest is a public proceeding conducted by a coroner in which witnesses may testify to corroborate, and add context to the coroner's findings. A jury can then use the evidence to determine who is liable for the death. The coroner, however, is not required to follow the jury's findings. Dr. Gerber's inquest was held in a school gymnasium with the county prosecutor as his advisor and 2 detectives as bailiffs. Sheppard and his lawyers were present for the 3-day inquest, but were not allowed to participate. One of his lawyers was even forcibly ejected from the room by the coroner, in which the audience responded with cheers, hugs, and kisses. Sheppard was questioned for 5.5 hours about his actions the night of the murder, his married life, and an affair that he had had. 17 witnesses were questioned under oath. Dr. Gerber's verdict named Sam Sheppard as the murderer. Sheppard was arrested during the trial. Local media ran inflammatory stories about Sheppard, including broadcasts about an affair. The jury was not sequestered, and at least 2 of the jurors admitted to hearing the broadcasts, although it is likely that many more were influenced by this media coverage. The first trial. Sheppard's trial began on October 18, 1954. The prosecution argued that Sheppard's motive for killing his wife was a 3-year-long affair with Susan Hayes. Because there was no direct evidence against Sheppard, the prosecution focused on inconsistencies in his story. The prosecution pointed to why there was no sand in his hair when his statement said he was fighting with the intruder on the beach. Sheppard was missing his t-shirt, which prosecutors speculated should contain some blood, and the prosecutors pointed to the discarded objects in the canvas bag as further evidence that Sheppard staged the crime. The lack of a murder weapon posed problems for the prosecution, but the lead prosecutor stated that a blood imprint found on Marilyn's pillow beneath her head was made by a, quote, two-blade surgical instrument with teeth at the end of each blade, end quote, such as a scalpel. The defense argued that Sheppard's severe injuries were caused by the altercations with the intruder. A neurosurgeon examined Sheppard and found he had a concussion, nerve injury, and many absent or weak reflexes, which are impossible to fake. The defense also argued that the scene was very bloody, but the only bloodstain found on Sheppard was on his trousers. Evidence from the autopsy suggested that Marilyn had bitten her attacker, but Sheppard had no open wounds. Further evidence from the autopsy indicated that there was a massive struggle, her head was severely bludgeoned, and that she was 4 months pregnant. After 5 days of deliberation, the jury found Sheppard guilty of second-degree murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. Appeal and retrial. In 1955, Dr. Paul Kirk, a professor of criminalistics, returned to the scene of the murder and made some startling discoveries. Based on the blood spatter on the walls, the killer was left-handed and should be covered in blood. He also theorized that Marilyn bit her attacker because she was missing her 2 front teeth. Finally, he determined that the blood droplets on the stairs do not match either Marilyn or Sam, which suggests the possibility of a third person present. Dr. Kirk also noted that the blood droplets that were found on the stairs were all the same size, making it unlikely to have come from the murder weapon. F. Lee Bailey took the case in 1964. He will later go on and represent O.J. Simpson in his famous trial. He files a writ of habeas corpus saying Sheppard's rights were violated. He claimed the original trial was a, quote, mockery of justice, end quote, and infringed on his 14th Amendment right to due process. On June 6, 1966, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down the original murder conviction due to a, quote, carnival atmosphere, end quote, and assertions that the judge was biased against Sheppard and did not sequester the jury or dismiss jurors that admitted to media influence. Before the original trial had begun, the judge spoke to a newspaper saying, quote, well, he's guilty. There's no question about it, end quote. After serving 10 years of his sentence, he was released in 1964, and Sheppard's retrial began on October 24, 1966. Media interest remained high, but the jury was sequestered for the new trial. The prosecution presented essentially the same case as the original trial. When the coroner, Dr. Gerber, testified, he described the murder weapon as being a surgical weapon, although no murder weapon was found, so the prosecution had no evidence to tie Sheppard to the murder. Sheppard did not take the stand for his retrial. The defense presented the findings from Dr. Kirk, which included blood spatter evidence collected from the Sheppard's home in 1955. The pattern suggested the murderer was left-handed, while Sheppard was right-handed. This evidence proved to be vital in the jury's decision. After 12 hours of deliberation, the jury returned a verdict of not guilty on November 16, 1966. Life post-incarceration. Sam Sheppard's life held no fairy tale ending. He returned to his surgical practice, but with deteriorated skills and a serious drinking problem. He botched 2 operations, killing both patients. He took barbiturates and evidenced symptoms of kleptomania. He married Ariane Teben Johans 3 days after his release in 1964 and filed for divorce 4 years later in 1968. The divorce followed a stormy marriage that included threats and more infidelity from Sam. His relationship with his son was strained. Sheppard's downhill slide eventually led him, in August of 1969, to make his debut as a professional wrestler using the name, believe it or not, Killer Sheppard. On April 6, 1970, at the age of 46, Sam Sheppard collapsed in his kitchen, vomiting blood. Medics called to the scene failed to revive him. A pathologist's report listed the cause of death as liver disease originally, but his official cause of death was Wernicke encephalopathy. encephalopathy, a type of brain damage caused by alcoholism. The death of Sam Sheppard did not mean an end to the continuing mystery surrounding the murder of Marilyn Sheppard. In 1989, renewed attention focused on Richard Eberling, the Sheppard's window washer, when a jury convicted him of first-degree murder in connection with an insurance scheme involving an elderly widow he had befriended. Eberling did little to quell the speculation about him as the possible murderer, telling various interviewers that he knew more than he would say about the Sheppard case, and even coming close to admitting guilt. Eberling died in prison in 1998. The year after that, in 1999, Sam Reese Chip Sheppard, Sam's son, filed a civil suit against Cuyahoga County on behalf of his father for wrongful imprisonment. Pursuant to a judge's order, both the bodies of Marilyn Sheppard and Sam Sheppard were exhumed for DNA and forensic analysis. In 2000, in an 8-week trial, a civil jury reconsidered the evidence of Sam Sheppard's guilt. Sheppard's legal team argued Eberling was the actual killer. They suggested that the murder followed an attempted sexual assault, which Marilyn fiercely resisted. Lawyers for the county argued that the 1954 jury got it right, pointing to blood evidence that they said cleared Eberling, which was his blood type did not match the mysterious third blood found in the Sheppard house. The jury ultimately sided with the county. A unanimous verdict was returned, claiming that Chip Sheppard had failed to prove by a majority of the evidence that his father had been wrongfully imprisoned. 6 of the 8 jurors said in interviews they were convinced Sam did it.